Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. And damn, I didn't expect this, but for the third month in a row, we have a CTP Dimension Chest, Awakened ISO 8, and Odin's Blessing 28-day check-in. So for all of you out there who have missed a day, I hope that you will not miss a day. You got to get a check mark, the purple check mark, above all 28 days in a row. You cannot miss a single day in order to collect the prize at the end, which could be a booby prize like a CTP of free-to-play, but it could also be a CTP of energy, destruction, rage, regeneration. There's quite a few good ones to choose from. So yeah, thank you Netmarble for putting together these amazing special check-in events. 2019 is ending pretty strong. Now, the thing that I wanted to make this video about is not this. It's actually about this check-in. We've got multiple CTP check-ins. Who would have thought I would be uttering those words all together and not as a joke for Marvel Future Fight. So we got the CTP of Authority today, and we're getting the CTP of Destruction in just 3 short days. So I've been getting a ton of questions from people on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Discord, saying, listen, I've got this CTP of, who is best for a CTP of Authority? I've got a CTP of Authority, I've got a CTP of Destruction, who should I give it to? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about who to give it to. Now, before we talk about that, I just briefly want to give you guys the max stat values for both the CTP of Authority and the CTP of Destruction. And it's important to know the max stat values so that you know if you want to or have to re-roll your CTP. Because you can take it as it is, but you can also change it and make it better. And so, of course, it's totally up to you, but that's basically the case. So you can see here that I've got the max stats up there, 45% for crit damage. When HP is below 50%, it can also be below 40%, so keep that in mind. 50% is technically better. And then the increased attack can go up to +5. It has to be always for each 1%. That second 1% is never going to change. And then, of course, the maximum invincibility that you can have is 5 seconds, and the minimum is 3 seconds. For the CTP of Destruction, let me just scroll through and find one here real quick. For the CTP, you know what? Okay, there we go. For the CTP of Destruction, just like CTP of Authority, it's 45% for the crit damage, and then the activation rate is always 10% chance, and then the penetration will change. It'll be anything from, I believe, 15 to 30% chance to penetrate. It will always be Super Armor, Barrier, Immune, Invincible for 5 seconds, and then the damage proc will change. The lowest is 120% for 1 attacks, the highest is 200% for 1 attacks. And keep in mind that the chance to penetration or the chance to penetrate and the increased damage are linked. So if you have a 30% chance to penetrate, you will automatically have a 200% damage proc, 200% increase. If you have a 120 increased damage, you will have a 15% chance to penetrate. It's 15 or 10%, I can't remember exactly. I could probably just check here by looking at one of my, nope, they're all re-rolled properly. So anyways, yeah, with that out of the way, now I want to discuss and I want to show you guys my new and improved, it's actually just improved, my improved Obelisk and CTP guide for the 5.5 update. And in particular, I'm obviously going to be focusing on the Destruction column and the Authority column for today's video, because those are the CTPs that everyone is going to get. Now, the disclaimer that I always put before I talk about my guides, these are just my guides based on my personal experience and opinion. These are not the rule of the game. You can definitely play however you want. You can give any CTP to any character you want, and you're more than welcome to disagree with me, but this is just how I see things, and nothing more, nothing less. Additionally, you can find a link down below in the description to this guide, along with all of my other guides like the tier list, the snapshot, Shadowland, etc. And I'm constantly trying to update all of these for all of the new characters and uniforms. So the very first thing I want to do, just really quickly to get it out of the way, is down in the corner here I've put all of the new characters and reworked characters and uniform characters from the latest update from 5.5, and I've given you my suggestions on what I think are the best, second best, possibly third best, possibly fourth best CTPs. This is not necessarily the rule. This is not necessarily my final opinion. This is just what I think right now. I did not put any of the characters on the main list here for CTPs specifically because I haven't yet come to a final conclusion. I have put some of them down here for obelisks, but that's a little bit easier and it's a little bit less punishing if you are, if you make a mistake or if you don't have the perfect obelisk. It's not as bad to unequip it or delete it, whereas if you unequip the CTP on the wrong character, it's a pretty big tragedy. Now, discussing the CTP of Destruction and the CTP of Authority, you're looking at all 203 characters. You're not just looking at the new characters. So you need to really understand why you would give a character a CTP of Authority and why you would give a character a CTP of Destruction. And that, I think, is the most important thing, is really understanding and being able to visualize in your head what the CTP does and what it doesn't do. So I'm going to try to explain that. The CTP of Destruction is mixed, because it has the damage proc and the crit damage, which are very good for PvE, but then it has the guard break immunity and the chance to penetrate, which are pretty much exclusively PvP abilities. Guard break immunity is helpful for certain characters in world boss content and Shadowland, but for the most part, you've got two stats that are very, world boss oriented, and you have two stats that are very timeline battle, alliance conquest oriented. So you want to usually give those to characters that you want to use in both game modes. Now, they are going to be worse, strictly worse, than the PvP obelisks or the PvE obelisks or CTPs. That's just obviously a given. You can't be as strong as a rage or an energy if you're giving up some of the stats for defensive stats. Likewise, you're not going to be as strong in PvP if you're giving up some of the defensive stats like max HP or a heal or something else, and you're giving that up for a damage proc. So you really have to understand the give and take that's going on there. However, a lot of these characters are already very strong for PvP for other reasons, parts of their kit, their passive effects, their uniform effects, and so Destruction helps them sort of overcome that final burden, whether it's, penetration, whether it's guard break immunity, whether they need a little bit more damage. In the case of someone like Spider-Man or Ant-Man, they need that extra punch, but they still need some of the effects of the CTP of Destruction. Spider-Man's case, he needs the guard break immunity. Ant-Man does well with the crit damage and the chance to penetrate because he doesn't have it on his regular skills 1 to 5, and so on and so forth. Keep in mind that I've removed all of the characters that have native penetration from this list, because there are some testings and there are some tests that have indicated that characters with native penetration, like Cable, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, etc., when they activate the CTP of Destruction, instead of calculating and adding on to their base penetration. So for example, Quicksilver has 70% penetration chance on his 4-star passive, whatever it's called, like momentum, and then the Destruction has 30%. That would be 100%. No, according to some of these tests, it actually ignores the 70% and only gives you the 30%, which is obviously terrible because it's less than 50% of his normal penetration chance. I cannot confirm nor deny these tests because I haven't done them myself. I'm in the process of contacting the Netmarble devs to find out if that's the case, the Marvel Future Fight devs, but I can't say yet. So I've just removed them from here for now for that reason. So that's basically the understanding, and that's basically the description for Destruction. It is for characters that you want to use in both game modes. They can still do both game modes effectively with a CTP of Destruction. They can still do World Boss and PvP, but they're not going to be as strong as themselves with, more specialized obelisks or CTPs, and they're not going to necessarily be as strong as other characters with specialized CTPs. So it's not the best of either world, but it is sort of the best of both worlds type CTP. The CTP of Authority is different. It's not the best of both worlds, and it's not the best. So you are taking a bit of a step down from Destruction to Authority overall, because you're trading the penetration chance for invincibility, and you're also trading the damage proc for invincibility. It has the least number of stats. It only has 3 stats. It does have the damage accumulation, which is nice, but I don't think the damage accumulation should be your primary thought when you're giving a CTP. Sorry about that, I had to sneeze. And so what I was saying was the Authority CTP's damage accumulation, once you trigger the invincibility, is good, but I don't think it's the primary reason to equip the CTP of Authority, and I wouldn't count on that accumulation to really do a lot of work for you in the long term. I think really the CTP of Authority can be looked at as basically a really good obelisk with an extra effect. But it's basically an obelisk that has pre-rolled guard break immunity, crit damage, and invincibility, which is still very, very good and still makes it into the top 5 of all CTPs, but I do think it is a step down from the value of these 4 CTPs, which I would consider sort of premier or top tier CTPs. It's sort of in a secondary tier of CTPs that's not as strong. But what I would say for the Authority CTP and the way you should sort of think about it is that it's obviously an extremely defensive PvP oriented CTP, and it's basically used for characters who either don't have a lot of HP and don't have healing, or characters that you just don't have a lot of HP for because you don't have their uniforms, or they don't have uniforms, or you don't have a lot of HP on your cards. You don't have HP Uru or Odin's Blessing heal Uru, and so you can't really bump up their HP, because if you can raise a character's HP, if you can really juice up their HP stat very, very high, and if they have a tier 3 especially, that helps the HP stat go even higher, you're much better off giving them a regeneration CTP, because it synergizes with their HP, it gives them more max HP, it gives them a heal. There's a lot of synergistic properties, and even though the shield on the regen is only 35%, if they have a large HP pool, that's much, much better than a 5-second invincibility, because there's just so many characters nowadays that have penetration. The invincibility doesn't work that well on authority, whereas the regeneration shield cannot be penetrated. So in most cases, especially against other tier 3 characters, regen is going to serve you better if you have a lot of HP. So in the case of a lot of these characters that I've listed for authority, you can see here, so Silver Surfer doesn't have a tier 3 and doesn't have a uniform. Same thing for Strife, same thing for Dr. Doom. Wasp has a uniform but doesn't have a tier 3, and she's just generally not a very valuable character on her own, which is why you wouldn't give her a stronger CTP. Same thing for Colossus. He's more there as support. Sentinel doesn't have a tier 3 or a uniform. Nova doesn't have tier 3, uniform, or level 70. So for a lot of these characters here, that is why I'm giving them authority. Because if you gave them a tier 3, if you gave them a level 70, if you gave them a uniform, you could pump up their HP stats so much, and then they would probably slide over exclusively into this group here. Now I did leave up a few heavy hitters here, Doctor Strange and Thanos. They're better, in my opinion, with the CTP of regeneration, but if you just don't have a CTP of regeneration and you want to play them in PvP, your next best bet is probably a CTP of authority. You can test, or you can sort of consider giving them a guard break immunity, HP invincibility, or a guard break immunity, recovery rate invincibility, obelisk. That might be almost as good as a CTP of authority, but that is why they are on this list, even though they do have their tier 3 and they do have their uniforms. They're obviously still on this list as well here. It's just that they are basically good for both. But this, strictly speaking, if a character has a tier 3 and a uniform, regeneration is almost always better for them than authority, unless you for some reason know you're going to be fighting against characters that don't have penetration, like let's say Silver Surfer. If you're only going to be killing Silver Surfer with a character, then yeah, maybe authority is better because he can't penetrate you anyways unless he has a CTP of destruction. So there are a few, niche situations where authority might be better than regeneration, but for 90+% of the time, for most characters, regen is just straight up better than authority. So you should also consider that when you are, looking at characters to give an authority to, but it's almost exclusively for PvP game modes. There are still characters on this list like Doctor Strange who can do really well in World Boss even with an authority CTP, because he just has so much all defense down and he's just really good at spamming his tier 3 skill and against Cull Obsidian and other world bosses. But for the most part, the character that you give authority CTP won't be able to do very well in most PvE content. So hopefully that's helped you guys out to consider characters to give the CTP of Destruction and CTP of Authority to. I've given you a rough estimate of where I think these characters rank as well in terms of their need for the CTPs. This is not ranking the characters in terms of how strong they are. So I'm not saying that Silver Surfer is better than Doctor Strange for all game modes. That's not the ranking of the character. This is a ranking of how much they benefit, in my opinion, from authority versus other CTPs versus just a regular obelisk in different situations. If you want a ranking of characters, you should look at the tier list or the meta snapshot. So hopefully that's helped you guys out. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Hit me up. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.